Thank you for joining Breaking News with Media Leaders. I'm your host, Keonte Coleman. I can't wait to get you all in on the conversation that we're going to have today. I'm going to bring in our guest, Christopher Nelson from NewsNation's Director of Talent Relations and Recruitment. Christopher, thank you for joining me today. And I want to start off the show with you situating yourself for the audience. And that's just kind of taking us to where you started, how you got into this business, and what kind of led you to being where you are today.
Well, thank you for having me, Keonte. So I can say that I'm almost 14 years into this professionally. I started my career back in July 2008 after graduating from Loyola University of Maryland. But even before that, I was a budding journalist. I wrote for school newspaper in middle school and high school, and I actually ended up interning at a television station for the first time when I was 17 years old. Back then, the Scripps Howard Foundation, Scripps, of course, a big television station ownership group, had a teen news show at ABC2, the ABC affiliate in my hometown of Baltimore. And so the students there, we came from high schools all around the region. We put together a monthly 30-minute newscast that we reported, produced, and anchored the content for that 30-minute newscast. So that was my really introduction really into broadcast journalism in particular. So from there, it's kind of off to the races. Undergrad, I majored in communications, specialized in journalism. I contributed to campus outlets. I was the campus radio news director, did a little bit with the campus television station. That was undergrad, and I did internships while I was in college. And then when I graduated in 2008, I was a broadcast apprentice at WAZ TV, the city's own station in Baltimore. A pretty legendary station that, it gave rise to Oprah and Gail. That's what they started their friendship. That was my first job out of college, a 6-month apprenticeship where it was rotational. I did 2 months in the digital department, 2 months on the assignment desk, 2 months as a news writer, and did that for 6 months. Then I ended up staying on as a freelancer for another year and a half, and I did all of the same things I described above. I filled in on the assignment desk. I worked for the newscast, the 4, 5, and 6. I AP the morning show, filled in as a writer on the 11. Kind of was a utility player. And that really was the foundation of my start of my journalism career, and a really good start. And after that, I went to NBC News for the first time as a news associate, another early career program designed to create a pipeline of producers of color. And so I went to New York in 2010, there for a year, again, a vocational program where, every 3 months you kind of move to a different department. Did a year there. A little intimidated by New York, so I chose to take a little bit of a detour. I went to graduate school in Washington, at Georgetown University, where I attained a master's of studies in law degree, thinking I would end up being a legal producer or something of that sort. Didn't quite work out that way. I ended up back at NBC for a second stint where I spent 7.5 years my way. I was the overnight assignment editor at NBC News. I was promoted to senior editor, helping manage a small team that included a social media reporter and eventually a desk assistant. So all total, I did 4.5 years of overnights at NBC. Then I moved to MSNBC, where I was a coordinated producer for helping to run coverage and planning and logistics for the weekend shows as the network continued to really grow on the weekends. And then 2 years ago, the height of the pandemic, I looked for a new adventure. Contract was up, and I said, "What am I going to do next?" And then this thing called NewsNation was starting, and I interviewed a couple times, and then my then boss called me and offered me a weekend manager editor position, which I thought was a good opportunity for me to further develop as a leader. It was also an opportunity to do something that I always aspired to, which was to work at a startup and cross that off my bucket list because I knew that the skills I would gain from working in a startup environment would be the type of skills I could carry forward in my career. So I thought it was essential that at some point, if I had an opportunity, to go for it. And so I did the weekend manager editor thing for a year, helping to run our weekend newscast and also help do special events planning for this network. And then I asked my boss, I petitioned him to give me the opportunity I now have to work in talent recruitment and development. And so I'm now the director of talent relations and recruitment for NewsNation, having been here since the start.
You said something in there that I don't think a lot of people, some people will look over. A number of times in there, you pointed out, I asked my boss for another opportunity. Can you speak about that a little bit? About what it takes to, hey, I think I've kind of grown from this. I want something else. Maybe I don't want to move anywhere else. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, look, I've always been intentional about trying to go for the things I want. I think in part because I've had good mentors and good advisors and coaches in my background who always taught me that I was meant to be a leader. So, for example, was something that was abstract for me. It was something that was very concrete because they were always people pointing to me, reflecting back to me that you already have these leadership abilities. You're always already someone that people look to and respect. And you also, you already as a performer, as a team player, you already perform. So you're a great role model and a great teacher and coach and mentor folks. So yeah, I think it's always important to take stock of what opportunities exist there within your companies or what opportunities might they need to create, and to be able to articulate for them why you're the person for them. I think several times people came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you these opportunities," but at a certain point, I said, "Okay, I can raise my hand and say I believe I'm able to do this. Here is why, and here is how." So I think you just have to be, again, as I always tell people, be self-aware, and always be constantly assessing what your strengths and then your areas of potential growth or improvement are, right. And then you just kind of level up as you go forward, and then you'll better prepare yourself to be able to go and articulate when you want a certain opportunity, why it is that you deserve that opportunity, why you've earned that opportunity.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role there at NewsNation now? What all you have to do? What does it entail?
Well, I think it is a big job that I probably didn't fully understand when I took it, but it's an exciting job. So I help my bosses, our leadership team, and also the hiring managers, senior producers, and the like. I help everyone with on air and off air recruitment and talent development. And the talent development isn't just for on air; it's also for the behind the scenes folks, the producers and the editors and the writers and photojournalists as well. So I focus my job on the recruitment part and then the talent development part, making sure we actively coach and mentor our team and develop them and give them opportunities. So that's really, my day to day. And then also I support, advising our bosses on strategic initiatives because I do have a wide background, having done, a variety of jobs in the newsroom. I really can, kind of weigh in and give insights and perspective. And then also an important part of my job is also working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I'm working to support our efforts and involvement we'll have coming this summer in the journalist color convention. So that's something that was really important to me. Something that has been important for me my entire career.
Okay. Um, can you talk a little bit about advice that you would give to students that want to enter into this field? Things they should be thinking about with their resumes, things that they should be thinking about with interviewing.
Yeah. So look, I think the most important things are to be crisp, clear, concise. In terms of resumes, when you're a student just starting out, it should be a one-page resume. It should have your best experience listed. It should have any unique softwares or that sort of thing that you're able to use. But should really, I think, synthesize who you are in one page. And it shouldn't be, I tell people I need a one page resume. Somebody like me that's probably been doing it for a little bit longer. I think that's really important because I think that's a first representation, right? That you can crisply, clearly, concisely synthesize who you are in a compelling and impactful way. I think the other thing I would recommend that folks do is also make sure if you have work or portfolio that hopefully you have a link or somewhere we could find it that include that on your resume, or make sure when you're applying for jobs online, if there's a place to add links or something like that, you actually take time to fill that part out and put a link back to a portfolio or reel if you have it. And I think in terms of interviewing, you should always do a certain level of preparation. That is really reading job descriptions and even taking care to even write down as you go through the process and evaluate the jobs, how characteristics or how opportunities you've had align with that job description. Because then that helps you when you're interviewing because you can naturally articulate, how you fit the role. And I would say pay attention to the questions on applications online. Pay attention to the questions when you're actually interviewing. Be a good listener, an active and engaged listener, but also make sure you're prepared and come with questions. I think some of the best conversations, and I always treat interviews like conversations, some conversations I have when the person is curious, when they're insightful, when they have perspective, they take the time to learn about my company or about the roles. So I think making sure that when you're in the interview process, that it's truly a conversation, you're active and engaged, and active and engaged, it definitely helps you to stand out. Again, that also gives people a sense of how you are as a person. Carry a really good conversation, and not just about selling yourself. Again, it's about listening. It's about processing. It's about making sure that you can, engage with people. That's a really important skill set in this industry.
How do you weigh internships, student media, publications, things of that nature? Because I'll tell you, we're having there's a generation of students who are having to work more. So outside of just going to school, so the availability to participate in those things may not have as much. So how do you all kind of weigh those factors out?
Look, I mean, it's tough, and I get it. Yeah, I worked throughout college, in the summers and in kind of the off seasons and the breaks as well. I think, look, it's important to get some type of and whether that be campus media, which I'm a big proponent of, and I did, or whether it be the good thing in this day and age is a lot more internships are paid, so that is a way that you kind of can do both. But I think it's really important to have some type of experience and exposure. When you can learn how a newsroom really operates, that gives you a competitive advantage as opposed to your peers when you're job where you can work and active. And here's the thing: they think it's fine internships that allow you to actively participate and allow you to walk away with a work product that you can then put in a real or portfolio, because then that of course is strengthening your chances of even landing an interview with someone when they see you have work product to show. But also when you do internships or you work on campus, it shows certain seriousness and dedication and commitment to the craft, right? So you do take note, but also that also belies and shows demonstrates that you know fundamentals, and so that's why that's also very important as well. So I would say, look, do one or the other. If you can't do both, I would recommend and highly suggest people do both. But it's also maybe you can't write for the school newspaper all year. Maybe there are times when there's some kind of project happening to volunteer with, or some sort of thing like that, or a local production is coming to town. That's often I see sometimes when people have freelance production companies, they just need help for a day or an assignment. So try to find whatever kind of works for you. There are opportunities out there, but you just can't make use that no opportunity exists then, because you just gotta have to make it work. But again, it's also um, not just about not just about doing it just because. It's about getting some real practical. You can't beat experience.
All right. I will take that back with me full fledged. Help me or help our audience, those that are early career professionals who may be in that first, second, or third year. And this isn't what I was thinking it was going to be. What can you tell them to help them stick it out a little while longer? I'm in that small market and I don't like this.
Look, I think it's important to have perspective, right? And so one of the things I often tell people have goal models. Have people, and goal models are people they're more than role models, and they're probably a little bit more kind of uh um in some ways more distant. But it's important to have people that you kind of track where they are, who they are, why they stand out, what has made them successful. So I think one of the first steps I would recommend is people kind of identify goal models. I'll say like a goal model of mine is from the Brown Duckett, who when I first discovered her, she was at JP Morgan Chase, but now she's the CEO of TIAA, which makes her one of the few black women and black people running a Fortune 500 organization. But take people that inspire you, that you can learn from, and different attributes, whether that is leadership, whether that's representation, and try to be encouraged and motivated by them, right? And then as far as when you're in the jobs, there's so much that we can learn and grow from. I always encourage people to take stock. Every week, I tell people, my mentees, have a Google Doc, and at the end of the week, take stock write down things that you've done, your pluses, your successes for them. Write those down and take stock of them, and make a note of them. It comes in handy. And then take notes of the areas or room for improvement that you have, to take stock of those as well. And then make an active plan to get better. Make an active plan to achieve what some of your smaller that leads to your bigger, right? I think you have to be self-aware. I think you have to be self-correcting. I think you have to stay motivated and motivate yourself. I think another thing I tell people when they're young, early in their career, young professionals, find your find your tribe, find your people who motivate you and inspire you and encourage you and coach you. I just tell people mentoring is not just being mentored by people that are above you; it is being mentored by your peers. I take great inspiration from my peers and learn a lot from them. And when I'm going through something or need advice, I go to my peers that are in my same group. And then I also mentor a lot of people these days, and I draw inspiration from them and knowledge from them, and they give me a different perspective and a way of thinking. So I think mentoring is something that's also important. Having advisors, people that maybe can't commit to being your mentor, but are people that have some kind of expertise that you can draw on when needed, is also important. And I think that's critically important. And I think those things kind of together, I think, can help you to be successful.
All right, Christopher, can you tell me about climbing the leadership ladder? What advice would you give to those professionals who are starting to think about, maybe I want to do a little more? What advice do you have for them?
Tell them, like I tell students when I teach, always ask the why. First thing I would say is ask why you want to be. What is your motivating factor for doing it? And I always tell people it's not enough just to want a title, not enough just to like the boss around. You really have to really be intentional about it. Have a vision for what you want to do as a leader, and then have a strategy behind whatever that you want to. So I think it takes vision and strategy. I think a big important thing I tell people to do is take note of leaders who you have enjoyed working for, or or enjoyed being led by, and then also take note of those leaders you did not enjoy working for, or you didn't want to be led by. And I tell people leaders and managers teach how to be and how not. So I think it's important to take stock of that and take note. Then I think constantly be assessing what your leadership strategy is, or what your leadership is, and then constantly seek to improve it. I always tell people two things. I always say be self-aware and self-correcting, and that does not stop when you're a leader or man. I think in fact it probably becomes more important. Constantly be taking stock of who you are in your own development, so that you can constantly make sure you are adjusting and being an impacted leader.
I really like that idea of just keeping stock of yourself. Those self evaluations, I think, is so important. Uh, when you do you do you have advice for individuals who may be outside of the media world, but maybe are trying to get inside the media world?
Look, yeah, I think look, it depends on what they want to do, right? If they want to be on air or off. I think often I'm asked for people who maybe have a specialty or accountant or something who wants to be seen as an expert, right? And I say to that, I say practice the art of communicating. That is, take every opportunity you have to speak on panels, to do public speaking, to be interviewed, whether it is print, um, or broadcast or digital. Take opportunities to continue to fine tune who it is you are, but also to fine tune your message. And I think it's important to do things like this, like not just always aim to be on network news, but to take opportunities to be on a podcast, to be on a streaming show, and again to practice those skills. That's what I recommend. And also when you do those things, seek feedback so that you know it is. I think in terms of offer jobs, business development jobs, with how do we continue to grow, our platforms and our companies, their marketing and communications jobs. I think there are a lot of jobs that you would be surprised that we have in the media. It's important, I think, to look for the intersectionality of those jobs. Look for roles where your skills are transferable. Look for roles in these vast media companies to kind of suit your skills. I think you learn that by attention, by studying the industry, but also by networking and talking to people that are in the media, because they can help you to kind of unlock, doors and see potential what you might not know about, right? So I think networking is a key part of that. If you're trying to make your transition, network with people, seek out information, and perspective and input, and I think that will help serve as a guide. Sure.
I think you got a lot of people that will appreciate that information. What about helping folks who are in local markets and they're thinking about making that jump to the network? What should they be looking out for?
Look, I think you should have a strategy behind it. I think that there's a lot of people that aspire to have network jobs, right? And I think there's still, particularly on the broadcast side, which I know a lot about, those jobs are still finite. A lot of these places have not that much, still not a gazillion jobs. I think to approach it from a tactical standpoint of is there a way to, of course, going to bigger markets helps happen for a lot of reasons, right? They're normally bigger cities with more dynamic news environments that challenge you, right? And put you in different positions. Or look at regional places, if there are regional networks or regional newspapers that have that which appeal to the diverse and audiences. And that's not just storytelling. I think is really important as well. So make sure that your reporting is broad based and make sure it's intersectional. It shows that you really can know how to do, complex stories or, stories that are less complex. I always tell people the job and the scope of journalists is to tell the stories that are ordinary and extraordinary, equal amounts of vigor, right? And anytime you prove you can do both those things, you'll have my attention. So I think that's really important. And I say for reporters that people want to be on air, I always tell them you need to be accessible, authentic, and credible. And that's what I would say when I see reels or when I look at reporters work on accessible, authentic, and credible. And then for producers, I always say you need to be visionary, creative, and adaptive. You should have a vision of how you want your show to be, nimble and flexible. Those are important things to think about constantly because this is a competitive landscape, right? No matter what type of one serve for the media. So I think those are things that are all important.
Okay. I think one piece in that talking about the competitiveness that happens within newsrooms and, against the people across the street, conflict arises. Uh, can you talk about dealing with conflict in the newsroom? Um, any tactics for resolution, things of that nature?
Look, I think the first thing I tell people to remain calm. Trust me, been there, done that, had conflict with people. Look, first thing is to remain calm, and to take a deep breath. And I think it is to step back. And I think you have to be fair, right? And I always tell people you have to look at the macro and the micro. So the big picture, there's some sort of disagreement that you need to resolve, right? Because we need to all work together, be productive, and be respectful of one another. I think on the micro level, I always tell people assess what it is that you may have done that could have led to this tension, and then assess what the other person has done that could have led to something. And the one goal and objective should be to communicate whatever the issues are in a fair way, in a respectful way that allows you to try to map a way forward, right? And so I think the key is again stepping back aside first and assessing both your role in the situation and then whoever you're in conflict with, and then committing to sitting down and being adults about it, being respectful, having a dialogue and discussion. Look, sometimes it's not going to easily be solved by just discussion between two parties. Sometimes you need to potentially escalate it and get some sort of moderation in there, and that's sometimes where bosses or leaders come in. That is sometimes where human resources comes in. You should try to solve it on your own first, but sometimes it takes having a certain level of moderation there just to ensure that everyone is heard, everyone is valued, everyone is respected, right? And also sometimes those folks can also give you some tools how to mitigate situations. But I think the most important things is take a deep breath. I think it's a step back, but I think it's always to own, to assess and then own your role in the situation. Don't just play the blame game. Don't just complain. Try to see, is there something that I myself could have done differently to help make the situation better? And always, they always give respect and always demand respect. That's what I would say in terms of dealing with.
All right. One form of conflict that comes up, and I would say for a number of people is more internal than external, probably, is trying to negotiate contracts and salaries. You have any thoughts on that you'd like to share with people that are going to be coming to the table? They got contracts coming up. What are some things that they should be thinking about?
Look, I do your research and do your homework about what the market looks like. So sometimes it is, you know, industry. There's industry researchers out there. I always think the RTD salary survey was really helpful to those of us as we grew up in broadcast. And I think there's similar salary surveys on the side as well. So do your research and know what the marketplace looks like. Know what the marketplace demands. I think that's one key. Another thing I would suggest, and I think we're moving into a culture that's more a little bit transparent about pay and compensation because we want equity, right? And so I think it's having that tribe I mentioned earlier, those tribal, having honest conversations and information that are tactful. Of course, you can't just go out and ask people what to make, but ask, hey, you might know someone that's in that market. What is the salary range for this position? What are some other things that I could ask for, as I'm doing my negotiations? And I think, have a plan and have what are the things I really want? What are those top five things you want? And I was taught by a friend semi recently to have, a maximum, a minimum, and then a mid range number and know what your kind of baseline, your minimum is, the least you would accept to take a position. And I think that's a really good thing to have in mind. I think to also think about other things. Uh, uh, PTO is an important consideration. Whether you get professional development time is an important consideration sometimes. If you're moving jobs or something like that, relocation is important things to think about. So take stock and do your research on what your company offer, and then take stock of what other companies offer. That way, if you're moving between companies, you're like, okay, this company offers this. Sometimes you get not because you ask not, right? But I would say make a strategy about what you really want in terms of compensation, so that you can be prepared to ask for it. The other thing I would say is you should always, I said earlier, take stock of who you are, what you've done, and what you've accomplished. That way, when you're going to negotiate internally, you can say I've achieved X, Y, and Z, and I've helped by doing these things. I've stepped up and exercised leadership. I've contributed to this, many special projects. Having taken stock earlier of who you are and what you are and what you do also helps when it's time to go in and have a negotiation session with someone. You have, information and metrics and perspective behind it, and don't just make it, you know, quantitative about I've done this much. Make it qualitative about this is the ways in which it's contributing, this is the ways in which it's helping, this is the way which I'm going to help down the line. And I think that's really important information that I think can be persuasive when it comes time to do negotiation. Sure.
That's all good tips and information there. And contracts, negotiation, those are things that a lot of us just didn't have a conversation about. So you get in these situations and you just don't know sometimes. So I appreciate you sharing that information. Uh, can you give me your thoughts on the future of the industry?
Well, that's a, a heavy question. Look, I think that the future of the industry, the media industry, is bright. I think, as we all see, it's really about the platforms that we'll choose to use in order to communicate this information, put out the content that we create, right? Like I think it's a competitive landscape that I think competitiveness, that leads to innovation. So I'm excited about what the future holds. I think, I always tell people I look at the news and information as both a producer of content still, even though I wear a recruiter hat now, but also as a consumer. And so I think I'm excited about the different platforms that are out there. I cheer on my competitors and my peers because most of them are friends, and I have friends in all of the networks. I think I'm excited about a lot of the things we'll now be able to do, right? Because there's now all these streaming platforms that we have. In addition to still linear, still traditional broadcast television is still an important part of that. Local news on broadcast and in print is still really important to folks. So I think we're going to adapt and find more platforms to share really good information. I think the people that are successful are people that will find a way to create really good content, find a way to create the strategy of putting that content out right. So I think it's going to continue to be more the same for a little bit here. But I think the challenge is always, and the opportunity we have is always create good, compelling, well context and contextual. I think that's what's really important, and that's what's really key. And so I think as much as things change, they also stay the same. And the good thing, and the thing is always like, who has the best stories? Who has the most dynamic interviews? That's the thing. Whether it is fiction or nonfiction, is really going to matter at the end of the day. So I tell people keep creating exceptional content. Because content is king, and just make sure you're putting your stuff on the best platform that serves it and elevates it. That's what I would say.
Okay. Got two more for you. This show is called Breaking News with Media Leaders. Christopher, break some news for us. What you got?
Look, I work for NewsNation, which is a big part of the Nexstar. I think I have been here, like I said, since the beginning. I was part of the team that launched the network. I think, look, I'm really excited about what the future holds for NewsNation. We are on the march toward being a 24-hour network. We hope to be 24 hours, within the next 2 years. So that means a lot more growth and a lot more opportunity. I think we are really excited about where we've come thus far. Like I tell people, when we first started, we had 21 hours of programming per week. We're now up to 10 hours of programming Monday through Friday, and then 3 hours of programming each Saturday and Sunday. That's been a lot of tremendous growth over the course of the last almost 2 years, and we're really excited about where else we're going to go. I'm excited about, we as part of Nexstar, we have the Hail, which was an important digital acquisition that we have. I'm excited about the synergy that we will continue to create with the Hail. And then, of course, we have the local stations group. That's an important part and pillar of what Nexstar Media Group is overall. That also supports the network, but I'm excited about the content we're able to push out to the local stations as well. So I think, look, the breaking news I have is that like there is more to come from where I sit, and so that's really really exciting. That means jobs, that means opportunities. That also means we're going to be a competitor of all these other cable networks that are out there. We're going to continue going and trying to innovate here. And as I said, your competitors make you better. They make you stronger. Like you got to play your game, but it's good to have competition, right? Because it challenges you to keep going and keep moving and staying motivated.
I like that. And it actually dovetails into the final question, which is make your pitch for your company. So if you have anything that you want to make sure people understand about NewsNation and working with Nexstar, share it with us.
So yeah, I've been at NewsNation almost 2 years. I came here after living and working in New York City for quite a bit of time, and I'll just say it has been an interesting experience, and it has allowed me to have unique opportunities. Like I said, I had started on the editorial, moved over to the talent acquisition side. I think I wouldn't probably have been able to make that transition if not for a company that was open minded about making sure that they listened to their talent right and they were responsive to their talent. I think Nexstar Media Group is an exciting company to work for. Like I said, we have those three pillars. We have digital broadcast and the station group side. We have the digital side, and then the network side, which News Station is a part of. I think that it is they're a very diverse company that has a lot of opportunities on the national level, but also at the local level with 199 television stations in a variety of markets. And that means their jobs on the broadcast side. That means their jobs on the digital side. But also means their sales jobs, right? Their engineering. So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there within the company. And I know I'm one of many recruiters that we have. We have also a team that reports the corporate side that I work closely with. And we're always looking for talented individuals to get them in at every stage of their career. And so I'm really excited about what Nexstar has. I'm really excited about the jobs and opportunities we continue to create. And so I encourage people who are interested to reach out. And all of us are active. The recruiting team is always active on LinkedIn, for example. So, just type in Nexstar Media Group and you will find us. And also visit nexstar.tv/careers and you will see our careers page and a lot of the opportunities that this company has to offer.
I think the NewsNation and Nexstar team should really appreciate you, there, sir. You're truly an ambassador, and I really thank you for your time today and your patience. For those that don't know, we've had a good bit of technical difficulties going on today, but Mr. Nelson has bared with me, and I thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Keonte. I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. Hey, folks, I will have a new show for you in a couple of weeks. We're going to have Vicki Bradley, the news director in Jacksonville, Florida, joining us. So I hope that you will tune in. Make sure that you're liking and subscribing to the channel so that you will know when new content arrives. Have a good one. Thank you.